Okay, so we're talking about the fly system. This is in our book, chapter 7. So skip ahead a little to chapter 7. So what is the fly system? Okay, here is a diagram with lots of tiny words and text that I will upload for you as a PDF. But the gist of it, the idea of it is, right, we have our proscenium opening here, okay? And then we have a volume of space equal to the space of the stage that is above the stage. That's called the fly loft. And in that space, we can bring pipes called battens in and out in order to bring in scenery, lighting, curtains, other stage equipment without disrupting the performance on stage, without needing additional on-stage space, and able to do that quickly and efficiently during a performance. So it's used for storage, it's used for creating scene changes, all of that kind of stuff is what our fly system allows us to accomplish. Everything from raising a curtain at the beginning to doing complicated scene changes in the middle of a show can be accomplished by the fly system if it's designed appropriately. Okay? So historically, our rigging system, our fly system, comes from a history of sailing, okay? So the first riggers were sailors who came to the stage, and that's why a lot of the naming conventions that we use are based on or sound like they come from boats, because those were the dudes who came in and rigged scenery in theaters initially. So that's a batten, right? A horizontal pipe that is raised or lowered over the stage. It's a horizontal pipe. It runs parallel to the proscenium. There are sets of them. So there are battens that are spaced almost equally through the depth of the stage, and the batten plus the rigging equipment, so the ropes, the pulleys, etc., that allow it to be raised and lowered with a minimal amount of effort. That unit is a line set, okay? So in an old sailor originated hemp rope system, that's referring to the material that those ropes were made out of, we have a batten, horizontal pipe. Each rope is tied off onto that pipe and then feeds through loft blocks, which are a pulley system, and then those ropes feed together through a head block and then run down the stage, okay? Or run down to the working height. So when we have no pulleys, right, we have a dead hanging situation, okay? So it takes 3 little stick figure guys up on the gridiron, which is a metal structure that supports the fly system. It takes 3 guys, 1 on each rope, to raise or lower that batten. And once it is at the working height or at the final height, the set height for the show, it does not move during the show, and they tie it off to the grid, and this is dead hanging, okay? So when each pipe is permanently tied off, doesn't move during the show, that's a dead hung pipe. And in this situation, you need much labor, right, in order to raise it, adjust it, and set its permanent height. In a hemp system, they have the set of pulleys, okay? So your pulleys, the loft blocks up at the gridiron height, allow the direction of the rope to change 90 degrees, and then that means you can arrange it such that all 3 ropes are pulled simultaneously by one force rather than having individuals pulling each rope, okay? This is then facilitated with a clue which connects, which is like this little guy here, right? Which then connects those 3 ropes or however many ropes together and allows you to attach weight, typically a sandbag weight system, to raise and lower and counterbalance the weight of the pipe, right? This allows one person to move that entire pipe system rather than needing the strength of as many people as it takes to actually lift that weight. So this is an early counterbalancing system that allows us to work more efficiently as we're raising and lowering things on stage. I hope that makes sense. Once we have achieved that height, once we move the ropes and the pipe to the height that we want it to reside, we will tie off those ropes. They are attached to what's called a pin rail, which is a steel, typically railing with holes in it that has wooden pins that seat into those holes and allow you to run figure eights around them. And once you've tied it off, you are able to to tighten that. And then when you want to move it again, you can pull that pin in order to release it. Okay. So that is how we used to set the position and lock it temporarily. This will be very similar to what ships are using to raise and lower sails, the same sort of pulley and rigging systems. So that's what we used to do. And now we use a slightly more complex but also easier to control system called a counterweight system. Okay, so a counterweight system is more complicated because it includes more working parts, but it allows us to walk up to the locking rail, pull open the rope lock, move the rope. One person moves the rope, lifts and raises the entire thing, and in order to lock it again, we just close that pin rail lock, or that locking rail lock. So that is a much more efficient way, especially if we're running a show, to move scenery in and out. Here is a diagram of the counterweight system. You will find in your packet a handout printed on the paper with blanks for you to write in these parts of the counterweight system, because that is something that I'd like you to put into your brain. So you might hit pause and fill them out, or you can go and look in chapter 7. I'll talk through these elements and these names of things, and then we'll have John show us them in the real life situation. Okay, so we have, same as when we talked about the hemp system, a batten. That's our horizontal pipe. Okay, we have lines that connect that batten to the fly system. Those are called lift lines, right? They're lifting the pipe into the grid. Okay, then the grid is these this row of horizontal steel beams where all of these loft blocks are fixed. So the grid is a network of steel beams with spaces in between them that covers the whole over stage space typically, and that allows some flexibility in the placement of this system and also allows you to dead hang other things in or around the moving parts of your fly system. So that's the grid, the gridiron. You have your loft blocks. That's that first pulley that turns things 90 degrees, right? Pulls and consolidates all of those lift lines together. In our counterweight system, those lift lines are going to be a steel aircraft cable typically, instead of a piece of rope, right? So they have less give in it. There's less stretch. It's a more reliable material for us, a stronger material. And so that will all come together at the head block. Same idea, okay? But in this case, instead of just coming down as a group of wires, in this case, right, it'll actually connect to what's called an arbor. And the arbor is then operated by this rope here, which is the purchase line. The arbor holds the counterweights, right? So this is how we balance the weight over here. We place counterweight bricks on an arbor. All of this arbor runs in a T-track, which keeps it in the correct position relative, like it keeps it from floating out of alignment with the system. And then we have a locking rail. In this case, it's elevated, but they also can be at the deck height or at the stage floor height, which is the way that the one is at Cal Poly. So our locking rail or rail is at stage height. We have a tension pulley that keeps the tension of the purchase line, which is the operating rope of this system, keeps the tension of that even. And then we have a loading gallery up at the top, and that's where we add or remove counterweights, right? And that's because when this comes down, that goes up. And so we are adding weight to this pipe when we're setting up the system. We would then also be adding weight to the arbor in its up position, right? So when the pipe's all the way down, the arbor's all the way up, and that's where we tend to add and remove weight. Did I miss any of the things? I think I said all of the things. If any of this is unclear, write down a question so we can talk through it. We'll talk through it in class too. So features of the counterweight system. These are the reasons why this is more better than the other things were before, okay? So our lift lines are made of aircraft cable instead of rope. We said that, right? So that's a steel braided aircraft cable. The system is more easily balanced and more efficiently operated during the performance. And it allows the option of this double purchase system, right? And so that can elevate the operating height and allow more clear space near the rail. So if we look here, this is a single purchase system. The rope is the same height as the stage, right? It goes all the way from bottom to top. A double purchase system adds an additional pulley, and that allows this entire deck area to remain clear and the whole system to be operated from this upper locking rail. Here's how the weight balancing works, right? So when your batten comes down, your arbor goes up, right? When your arbor weight comes down, your batten goes up. So here is the close-up drawing of your arbor, okay? So all of your stage weights have this shape with the U cut out on each end. Those U-shaped cutouts will fit into the track of the arbor. So that's how they are locked in to the arbor. And then we have spacers, right, that go in between the various weights. Each stage weight is going to be a different weight depending on the size of it, the size of the brick. So there are 20-pound stage weights, there are 50-pound stage weights, there are 10 pounds and 5 pounds, so that you are able to get the appropriate balance to whatever equipment you're adding to the batten on stage. And those stage weights will then all stack together into a pipe. And we have little spreader plates, which are thin metal plates that go in between and distribute weight. The other thing you'll find most of the time is that the bottom few stage weights will be painted a different color. And then they'll have a spacer that sits right above them. And that's because those bottom couple of stage weights, 2 or 3 stage weights typically, are what we call the pipe weight. So they counterbalance just the pipe with nothing on it. So you would never take those off the arbor. They are always there no matter what equipment you add, because that balances out the weight of the pipe itself. Okay? So here's what we got to think about now. How do we load or unload equipment from our fly system, right? So if we're looking at this situation, right? How are we going to add things to this pipe safely? And the name of the game is to manage potential energy, okay? So you want to think about it from a physics perspective, right? Potential energy is, in this case, a bunch of weight that's like floating up in the air and gravity is pulling it down. So what we want to do is manage where that potential energy is so that it is always in the down position. And that way we know we are working as safely as possible. We would never want there to be either on the pipe or on the arbor a bunch of weight that creates potential energy so that if you were to, for example, unlock or lose control of the line set, that potential energy with the gravity involved would come crashing down, right? That's how people get hurt. So this is what we want to think about as we load or unload things on the fly system. So step one, if I'm loading equipment onto a batten, right? And in order to load equipment onto a batten, I need to add weight to that arbor to counterbalance it. My step one is to fly the batten all the way into the deck, right? So now if I'm adding weight to that batten and it's heavy, there's no place for it to go. It's fully all the way in, okay? Step one, all right? So then we step two, place our load on that pipe and properly secure it, right? That could be 6 lighting instruments, 12 lighting instruments, and then each of those is tightened to the pipe and has typically a safety chain, right? As an extra precaution to prevent it from falling off of that pipe. So now we have our batten, it's all the way in and all of the weight is sitting there, right? On that ground level. No place for it to go. If the lock is open, nothing happens, right? Because all of the potential energy is down at the ground. So at that point, we would call to clear the rail area, right? So we would yell to everyone on stage, hey, get out the way, because we want to add weight to this line set, okay? Then we have someone up in the loading gallery. So this is once we're all clear from that area. And the reason for that is as you're loading weight, as you're adding weight to that arbor, at some point, right, whoever the person loading the weight is holding 20 or 50 pounds in the form of a very heavy metal brick over the edge of a railing in order to seat it onto that arbor. And so that weight could fall and smash someone's brain. So we call out, we clear the area, then we load the equivalent in stage weights to the weight of the equipment that we just loaded on stage, okay? So once that has been completed, right, then the person up above will say that they're clear, right? Once all of that additional weight is secured, they'll let everybody know that they are clear, that they've stepped away from that line set. And at that point, whoever is working on the deck will test that the line set is in balance. So they will unlock the locking rail and they will check and see if pulling the rope that brings the batten in has the same amount of tension as pulling the rope that brings the batten out. And so those two ropes, if it is equal, if it is balanced, if it's the same amount of weight on the pipe as on the arbor, will move evenly by one person, right? If you're out of balance in some way, you'll know immediately because it'll be super heavy. You'll be lifting that additional weight or that amount of weight that's out of balance, okay? And then once we're in balance, so if we're not in balance, then you have the person upstairs either add or remove weight until you are. And then once that is complete, you can fly that line set out to its proper trim. Trim is the word we use to denote the height, right? Trim is a height measurement, and it's typically the set height for the production during the show, whatever. This is where the pipe with all of the lighting equipment is always going to hang during the show. That would be its trim height, okay? It's not always this easy, and we'll have John tell us a little bit more about that, because sometimes the equipment that you hang is not taken onto the pipe immediately by weight, right? So if you are hanging something like scenery, which is very heavy, when you add that weight to the pipe, the scenery is probably still sitting on the deck, right? It's probably still sitting on the stage. So you could be adding weight to that arbor that isn't taken immediately until that scenery or until that very heavy curtain is halfway up or all the way up into the air, right? So while parts or all of that pipe weight is, or the on-stage weight is sitting on the deck, you have to manage that out of balance potential energy in different ways. You have to safety the line set in different ways so that it doesn't move before you're ready for it to. Okay, so that was adding equipment. So the unloading system is exactly the opposite. So to unload and remove weight from the fly system, we do exactly the opposite of the thing that we did at first, okay? So we'll still first fly that batten all the way in. We'll call to clear the rail, and then we will remove weight from the arbor. So this again means arbor's up in the air, pipe with equipment is down on the ground, pipe still has all the equipment attached to it. At that point, we remove the weight from the arbor, and this again places all of that potential energy at the ground level. Okay, so this could be either all the way down to the pipe weight if we're taking everything off of the batten. So you would just take off every weight until you get to the special colored ones at the bottom. Or it could be up to a certain spacer if like some of the equipment is going away and some of it's staying on that pipe. Then once you have removed that weight from the arbor, you can remove the load from the batten. You can take the equipment that has been added or that needs to be removed off of the batten. And then you can fly that empty batten out to trim, or you can do the same test, right? Testing the weight experience, okay? Last thing we're going to talk about is really a safety pattern. And there are slight variations to this safety pattern. We're going to practice it together in our Zoom meeting as well, because we would normally make you yell on the stage, but I don't have that option. So we'll just do it in Zoom. When you are operating the rail, the person on the floor and the person in the loading gallery are both responsible to maintain the safety of everyone in the space, right? And so there are several things that we do. One of them is anytime scenery is moving on the fly system, unless it is in the middle of a show, right? We will call out on stage to alert everyone else that a pipe is moving, right? Because if you're not aware, you don't know to look up, and a pipe comes down on your head or a piece of scenery comes down on your head, and it's a bad day for everyone. So the first thing we'll do as you walk over to move a pipe, right? I need to bring in the line set, which has the first electric, right? So that's all of the first pipe full of lighting equipment. And so you say to the people on stage, on deck, line set number 4 is coming in, right? So I'm saying the line set so that they know what depth of the stage the scenery or other equipment is moving. And then I let them know whether that pipe is moving in or moving out so that everyone is aware, and you have to be loud. Everyone has to hear you or this doesn't work. Okay. And then let's say you are, you have flown in a pipe, right? And then once the pipe is in all the way, you let your person up in the loading gallery know, right? They're going to ask you if you're clear on stage, right? That actually would happen before this. And so you let them know that the rail is clear, that there's no one in the way. And then you say on the loading gallery, please load or unload line set 4 to however much weight is needed on that pipe. So you communicate with them what needs to happen once you're clear on deck, okay? Then you will hear them respond, line set 5 to 25 pounds. Am I clear to load or unload? You confirm and you say you're clear once everyone is out the way, right? And then they say, I'm loading weight on line set 4. And then they say on the rail, line set 4 is loaded at 25 pounds. And they let you know that they are clear. And then the person on the deck will come back and let you know that they're testing weight, right? So they'll be like, line set 4 at 25 pounds, I'm testing weight, right? So then they will test the weight on that line set. And you repeat until you are at balance, right? Until your counterweight is correct. Then you would fly that line set out to trim. So that's an example The pattern can be slightly different in different situations. We're going to work on it. The key is to be very clear in your communication, right? And to double check that there's no one underneath you before you load or unload weight. And to double check that whoever is loading or unloading weight is clear, has completed that work before you move a line set, okay? And then, of course, to make sure that everyone on stage is aware when a line set is moving in and out. So that is an example of the communication pattern with the fly system. And we will practice that together, okay? So that's it for this one. And I'll see you guys in our Zoom meeting. Bye.